Welcome to Arcane Link. I'm Ruben Clarke. Most of what matters in security happens behind closed doors. This show is about the people in those rooms, the decisions they make, and the hidden links between strategy and reality. Today I'm joined by Andy Larkum, founder of ADL Consulting. Andy is a specialist in turning complex regulatory requirements into strategic business enablers. He spent years helping organizations navigate the high pressures of ISO 27001 and the increasingly volatile world of supplier risk management, ensuring that security becomes an enabler rather than a bottleneck. So, Andy, what got you into security? Was it planned or did it kind of just happen?
Yeah, happy accident, really.
Mm-hmm.
I was working in my own business and getting, I think, increasingly disillusioned with the work I was doing. I was working in web and database systems at the time, database systems at the time. Mm-hmm. And I had an invitation from a friend to come and help him build his business. So he was building a cybersecurity business and had got some funding to do that. So I went and worked with him, and we built a small team and built a really cool product. I think the challenge there was that in this industry, people don't want to be told how to do it. They want to have someone come and do it, and they don't want to figure it out for themselves or do the reading or do the heavy lifting. They just want someone to come and do it for them. And so I kind of spun out of that business back into my own and reshaped it around information security and data protection. And the rest is history. I've been doing this now for, I think, 12 years.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah.
Nice. Okay, so my next question is, what's the biggest lesson that you had to learn early on in your career the hard way?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think there's a few things there that I could hit on. I think the first is that in security, you're never going to win everyone. And yeah, I think so much about what we do is about taking people on the journey with us. There's a great saying, something along the lines of, if we understand the why, we'll endure the how, right? And too often in security, we jump straight to how. We're solutionising and going, well, we could fix it like this, that, and the other. But everybody else is going, that's just really annoying. Stop it. So you want to win people. You want to take them with you on this journey and help them see this is better because. And if you're not bringing that value add, people quite quickly get disillusioned with what you're trying to do and they stop wanting to work with you. And the painful bit about that is you can't always win. And that's okay. It has to be okay. We in security, we have to be as pragmatic as we can and recognize there's a business need driving this stuff. And sometimes, whilst we might be purists and want it super safe and secure, the business can't wait or can't afford that and is therefore going to have to accept some risk and do it anyway. And that can feel painful, but we've just got to do that. So yeah, I guess you can't be everybody's friend all of the time is the hard part, because I don't like not being people's friends.
Yeah, of course. I imagine, it's part of your character. So earlier on as well, you're probably, trying to make the best impression with everybody that you meet. So trying to balance the, doing what's necessary versus doing what you can actually achieve is probably quite a challenge there.
Yes, exactly that.
What's a non-technical skill that turned out to be more useful in your career, more so than any kind of coding or anything like that you didn't think would be useful, but turns out is very useful?
Okay, that's a good question. I think I refer to a good friend of mine. His name's Dr. John Whitley. He's a great mate of mine, and he used to refer to superpowers. He said everyone's got a superpower. He said you just need to figure out what they are. And he said, Andy, I think you've got two. And he said that the first is you're really good at taking technical things and explaining them in non-technical ways. And the second is you're really good at finding people who are good at things and getting the best out of them. And for me, that was quite a surprise because I just thought those were survival tactics. I'm not very bright. I'm not very smart. So survival tactic was find people who are bright and who are smart and get the best out of them. Right? That's just logical in my head. And then in terms of trying to explain things in a non-technical way, that was just so I could understand it, never mind everybody else. But I think those soft skills are really important in security, being able to, again, as I said on the last question, to take people on that journey with you so that you're not just coming in with these astonishing technical solutions that are really good, but everybody's lost and frustrated and doesn't get it. You've got to be able to get people on board. And quite often that starts with the really basic stuff that we often forget to explain because it's so obvious, right? But we don't. I mean, passwords is the always go-to option here. People are still rubbish at passwords because they still don't understand how easy they are to crack if you're not using sensible passwords, right? Even with good passwords, they're still reasonably straightforward to crack. So we have to help people understand that. And if we can do that and take them on the journey with us, then everything gets better, including security.
When people ask you what you do, how do you explain it to them without sounding like a textbook or making security sound boring?
Yeah. I look, for most people, security is boring. And until you can get them into the conversation, the trick is getting them into the conversation. And once you kind of get started, people don't stop. They start telling you their life story and all their mates who got hacked and what happened to them, right? But that initial intro is tough. So I tend to deliver it straight. People say, "What do you do?" And I sort of laugh and shrug a little bit and say, "I work in information security," and then explain, which is normally the end of the conversation because it just sends people to sleep, right? And so I turned that into my elevator pitch, which was I help business owners sleep better. And that seems to generate some interest. People like, what, you like, sleep therapist or something? But it's that peace of mind element that we bring once people kind of, firstly, the things they thought were really scary or thought were really risky, once you unpack it, turns out it's not that bad. But also just helping people understand what the risks actually are or what the threats actually might be to their business. That for an owner or for a C-suite team is really cathartic. And they relax a little bit, going, "Oh, okay."
That's an interesting one because, like you said, when you lead with that, the mind starts to wonder. Right. Do you work for some sort of, like I said, as a sleep therapist? Do you sell mattresses, pillows? Right. It could be anything. So yeah, it's a good little kind of hook to get people, engaged to actually dig deeper and find out what it is that you actually do.
Sure.
Nice.
Get them a little interested.
Yeah.
Hooked, and then we fish them in.
Reel them in. What's the challenge that you see everywhere now that no one seems to be talking about, that you're just thinking, why is nobody talking about this?
Well, yeah. Look, right now where we are in the world, AI is the obvious go-to, but everyone is talking about that, so it's not really a sensible answer. I think if I just stay on AI for a minute, I think people don't understand yet that we actually don't know how to secure AI. I think that's the bit that is really worrying at the moment from a security perspective. Is it's not just that this is a new challenge, it's that we don't know how to do it. And you've got businesses all over the place who are just switching on AI functionality without having really thought it through or considered the potential security risks associated with it. So whilst AI is being talked about a lot, I think the security of AI is rather less so being talked about. And I think if you're in the enterprise space, then maybe you're doing a decent job of trying to keep a lid on AI. The problem with that is, of course, that the pressure to engage and use AI tooling is immense, and extremely hard to resist. So from a risk-based perspective, you've got a lot of businesses who are accepting a lot of risk right now because they haven't got time, don't want to wait for all the due diligence to be done and the security elements to be addressed before they just jump in. Let's go. Because AI is fun. So to say, AI is being talked about a lot. That was a long answer to say not AI. I think the fundamentals are still the problem. People are still the problem. Problem, that sounds wrong, putting it like that. People are your biggest asset and your biggest risk all in one go. And I think we are still doing a terrible job of educating our users around security. And I think if we did a better job of educating our users around security, everything would get easier. And there's questions in my head as to whether we should be doing a better job of providing that education at school level, because why not? We're growing these kids up to go into full-time work, and in a technology-enabled society, to not teach them good security just seems bonkers.
Yeah, it's a disservice.
Right? So, I think that's my thing. It's about people. Ultimately, we're trying to protect people and people's data, as well as the systems that we employ, and people use those systems. So teach them. Let's do better at educating people. That, I think, that's my thing.
Nice. Very nice. Okay, Andy. So we're going to talk about ISO 27001 because that's something that you specialize in. A lot of people get the impression that the implementation of this standard is a massive management overhead. So how do you ensure that the clients that you work with, that's not the experience that they have?
Oh, that's a great question. So, yeah, I think a lot of people's experience of ISO, in fact, any of the ISO standards, is just this management overhead that's horribly expensive and time draining and a little bit jobs worth in some settings. And it doesn't have to be like that. And it's one of the things that when we build systems, and ADL Consulting build a system, we make it as lightweight, as light touch, as easy to manage as possible, and make sure that the systems we build actually provide management intelligence back again as well, right? So it's sensible information output from your system, so you get to know whether it's working or not. And that's, it's actually baked into the standard that's what should be happening, right? You've got clause 9, it's monitoring and measuring. It's tell me, is this thing working? And I think companies often get bogged down in just huge amounts of documentation that isn't required by the standard. They get kind of weighed down by feeling like there's loads of stuff that has to be delivered that the standard doesn't say has to be delivered. And you've actually got a lot of consultants out there who are out there to get you dependent on them, right? They want to be the drug that you can't shake, because that's a really good business model. Actually, if you're wholly dependent on me for your system to work and to maintain your certification, which you need, by the way, in order to satisfy these clients, that what a great business model for the consultancy, right? So we I always say I'm a teach a man to fish kind of guy, right? I'd like to teach you how to fish. It turns out a lot of people love the idea of fishing until they get to fish, and then they realise they don't like it actually, but they still want the fish. So can you do it? If I've built a system that's got enormous management overhead attached to it, and now I'm expected to maintain it, that is suddenly a very bad business model for me. So I say I am incredibly lazy. And one of my clients helped me with that and said, no, you're very efficient. I was like, that's a much better word to use, efficiency. But if I don't want more work than I need, who wants to do more work than they have to? That's just dumb. So let's build lightweight systems. Let's look at what you already do and hook into that as much as possible, so that the maintenance of your system is basically what you're already doing anyway. And that way your overheads just drop through the floor, right? So, lightweight, light touch systems that hook into what you already do, and make sure that we've thought about from the start, what are the things we're going to look at? What's going to tell us whether or not this system's performant? And then we take those readings, and that turns into our management intelligence that we can then feed back to senior management or leadership or board or whatever, and say, look, here's where our problems are. Here's where we're doing well. That I think is the key value piece. Don't do ISO just for a badge. Do ISO to improve security. The badges are nice to have, and actually the whole thing just becomes much more valuable to the business.
Internal audits are supposed to be objective, but they're often done by the people who actually built the system. So how do you foster a culture where auditors feel safe enough to report a major nonconformity to their boss without feeling like they're kind of hanging themselves on a noose?
God, you're killing it with these questions, man. That's a real challenge, right? I think if I go back in the previous question, we were talking about kind of the importance of management feedback, and that actually if you do ISO 27001 to improve security rather than to have the badge, the whole process gets better and more valuable. And I think the same true here with internal audit, right? Is if the culture, if the end game for the business is improving security, then findings become a positive rather than a negative. I mean, it's not that we're made up about the fact that something's broken. It's that we're really pleased that we found that something was broken before it led to a disaster.
Yeah, or somebody else found it.
Exactly that, right? So the internal audit process, when we do internal audits with clients, we always pitch it as, look, this is the friendly version of the audit, right? Where friendly is, we just want everything out on the table. Air your dirty laundry, get your cards out, pick your analogy here. If there's something to be found, we want to find it now. And we want to find it now for two reasons. One, because we want to fix it. And two, because we want to find it before the external auditor finds stuff. Right? And the more that you can get out and deal with in your internal audits, the healthier your whole system becomes, and the easier your external audits become. So I think trying to make sure that from the inception of your system, that kind of concept and that kind of approach is adopted. And same with your external audits, right? I mean, a good external auditor, for any auditors watching this, the key message here is your audit shouldn't be attritional, right? It's not about finding things and your finding being a success for you. It's about helping the client, right? And all audits should be about helping us to do better, not about catching somebody out on something. And the auditors that I come across who, they've come in to show how clever they are, or they've come in to, determined that they're going to find something somewhere. And there's almost a glee when they discover a problem. Yeah, that's just really unhelpful, and actually fosters a general culture in the industry space of, this is horrible, don't want to do this. But your internal audits are first person set of eyes. We're the insiders. We get to know what's going on. We know where the skeletons are and where everything's buried, right? So we're going to go dig there because that's where there's likely to be more problems, and let's get everything out. And then, as I say, your external audit should be a fresh pair of eyes coming and having another look at your system and spotting your blind spots. That's what external audit should be. And for, like I say, internal, just get it out there. I would rather find things at internal audits than external.
Okay, so Andy, if I'm a CEO and I've only got 15 minutes a quarter to know if my ISMS is actually protecting the business, what are the sort of key metrics that I can look at to know that I'm actually being protected rather than just being compliant?
Wow, that's a big question. And I'm gonna preempt this and with a disclaimer of you'll get different answers from any different CISO, CIO, security pod that you ask, because they'll all have their personal things. I think for me, We talked earlier about how educating your users is kind of fundamental, basic key to good security. So I think I'd look at our training and making sure that our people are actually doing their training, and if they're not, let's go after them somehow. So that'd be one, and then I'd be looking at number of events and incidents that have been reported or handled. Obviously, the more events turn into incidents, the more issues that we have potentially. So that would give us a good indicator as to where problems might be. And then the last one would be kind of overall risk exposures. So where are our key risks, and are we addressing those key risks? So for any risk that we've got that we're not happy with, do we have mitigations in place or being put in place? And if so, how are we progressing on those things? It's like having a wound that you're not treating. You can't just leave the wound sat there festering. You've got to actually deal with it. And if we've just got these risks sat there, leaving us exposed, and we're not actually dealing with them or addressing them, that's a bad place to be. So I think for me it'd be risks, education, and events and incidents.
Nice, very nice.
Top three.
Nice. So Andy, as we know, auditors often come into a business with their own expectations about how a particular control should be implemented. But the ISO 27001 standard says that a business should manage their risk based on their appetite. So how do you defend a quote unquote risky business decision against an auditor who has a kind of preconceived expectation about what something should look like?
Yeah. Okay. It's a real challenge. And again, for auditors watching this, my plea to you would be, the standard is quite clear about the things it says you must do, but it is a framework to be applied to any business, right? So I think the key thing for auditors should be that you come in with an open mind about how the standard's been applied, and that you search for, has this business actually done the things the standard says they must? And for everything else, how have they chosen to apply? And I think the whole core of ISO is risk management and understanding. Again, a lot of auditors are career auditors, and for kind of helping them to understand that, look, in this business, this is how we behave, and these are the risk appetite type criteria that we've identified, and therefore this activity or this thing, we as a business get to choose whether or not we accept that risk. And it's not an auditor's gift to decide whether or not that application of risk is appropriate. I mean, technically, a business could say, we've identified all these risks, we're perfectly happy with all of them, we're not going to apply any of the Annex A controls. Technically, you could do that. And technically, an auditor would have a really difficult time failing them because, well, you've decided to accept everything. And you're allowed to do that. I'm not suggesting anyone should, by the way, just to be really clear. Don't do that. But one could. And I think, trying to help auditors to say, well, respectfully, it's a business decision to accept that risk and to not apply that control in that way or to this risk. I think this is where opportunities for improvement come into their own, right? As an auditor, if you're looking at that going, well, I think that's bonkers. It's like, yes, okay, you might think that's bonkers, but does the standard say I can do that? Because if the standard says I can do that, you cannot write that up as a minor nonconformity or even a major nonconformity. That's not your thing. Standard didn't say we have to. So in that moment, you can say, well, I think that's a crazy decision, so I'm going to write that as an opportunity for improvement, that you should maybe revisit or rethink this thing. Fine, opportunity for improvement. Not going to argue with you on that. You make that a minor or a major, I'm coming after you. I mean, in the audit, I'll be very gentle and as gracious as I possibly can be to help you try to see that that's outside of your gift as an auditor. But if you're going to insist on it, I'll raise a complaint after the fact. And I would encourage businesses also to remember that you do have a right of reply against an audit decision. We had an example where an auditor had raised a non-conformity because they believed that my client's legal register should have referenced legislation in foreign nations into which my client was delivering services. So they delivered a software as a service product. Now the EULA for that product says that all legal recourse was through the courts of England and Wales, right? So UK law is applied to their solution, and it's nuts in a SaaS setting to believe that your users could be literally anywhere in the world, and therefore we now need to know the entire world's legislation. I mean, that's just nuts, right? That absolutely cannot be true. But they wrote it up as a minor, and we complained and said, look, this is unthinkable. There's no way we could possibly do that. Certainly not with the resources that this company had. In fact, I'd argue in most companies that's just not a possibility. And our claim was upheld, and the minor was thrown out. So you can get some recourse after the fact. So, and please do, if your auditor is being unreasonable, please complain about them, because actually that does the whole community a service in trying to improve the standards of auditing.
So if we're talking about different departments, procurement want the tool yesterday, but security team are going to want to wait, a couple of weeks for a SOC 2 report. So how do you enable a fast track way for low risk tools so that security isn't seen as the department of no and just kind of gatekeeping all the solutions and fun toys that people want to kind of bring into a business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Our job as security is sort of being gatekeepers, right? The problem with that, generally in my experience, is capacity. In that due diligence takes time, and doing due diligence properly on the suppliers takes real time, but at the same time you don't want to be a blocker in the business. And I was saying security, it's not our job to say no, it's our job to explain risk and let the risk owner say no, and then it's not all on you, right? But I think to help with this, one of the key things you can do is understand the difference between critical and not critical systems, right, or solutions. So if you can say, well, this supplier or this product, or this service is a critical service, like, right, well, in that case, full due diligence has got to happen, versus this slightly less critical thing, which we'll therefore say is not critical. Maybe we can fast track that, right? So understanding your criteria for what constitutes a critical system is critical, and kind of step one, and then you just slot your suppliers based on those criteria. You say, well, that's going to be a critical supplier or critical solution for us, and therefore we are going to have to do this due diligence, and then everyone can get on board with that, right? I think part of the frustration here is often a kind of a lack of understanding, or even a misunderstanding or miscommunication around why we think we need to do all this due diligence. And if it's like, well, I'm just buying coffee from this company, it's like, well, maybe they're not mission critical to us then, much as coffee could be considered mission critical in most businesses. If we had to change coffee supplier, as sad as we might be about that, it's not going to create business interruption, unless, of course, everybody is running on caffeine, in which case your whole business could grind to a halt. So for the most part, not critical, right? Versus this solution that our HR system or our main accounting system, or Microsoft 365, if you're running on that, or Google Workspace, those are critical systems. And we should make sure that before we start putting scary, sensitive information or business critical information to those systems, we've done the work to understand the security of that platform. But generally speaking, supplier management is not done terribly well especially in small businesses, because they just don't have the resources. Sales moment. Coming this year, actually, we've actually been building a platform. It feels so salesy now, but we're actually building a platform for precisely that. We've seen this problem with our client base of just how do you manage suppliers in a meaningful way that, again, adds value, so we understand the risk in our supply chain, without it being this huge overhead and this problem for us as a business. So we've got a supplier management solution coming soon. So I'll put that out there just in case people are interested. Come and have a look at the website and we'll point you at it.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Nice. Can you tell us a little bit more about this supplier management thing that you're working on?
Yeah, I can. So stumbled into sales here. So the key challenge in most businesses is understanding the risk that suppliers make. And, if you can start with that, what is it this client's this supplier's delivering to us? How risky are they as a supplier? So if they screw up, how bad's that going to be for us? And what do we think the likelihood is of them screwing up? And you can look at all sorts of nice things like, security badges that they've got and, their privacy policy and what they say they're doing with our data and, those kind of things. And that can help you assess how scary are they. And so our solution, basically, it's the idea is a community-based type solution where the suppliers themselves provide their information about who they are and what security badges they've got, and what other badges they might have, so like B Corp or the ISO standards or things like that. And then they can kind of tell you about their product and what the product does, and if it's a SaaS product, where the data is going to live. So you've got data residency and AI capabilities all baked into that, and then you as a user of the system or company using the system, you go and find those suppliers or invite those suppliers to come and fill in that information. And then you can choose whether or not you're willing to work with that product. And then it's got things like contract renewals baked in and certificate renewals. So you get reminders to go and have a look again at your suppliers each year and things like that. So it's just trying to drive that engagement with your supply chain, but also visibility of where the risk is in your supply chain as well.
Very nice. Yeah, that sounds really good. So you kind of like front running the whole due diligence process by having a centralized location where people can pick suppliers, and some of that due diligence process already taken care of through the
exactly that. And I think this is not new, right? Mm-hmm. There are products out there that already do this, and I know that. In my experience, the problem with those products is they're incredibly hard work. In fact, I once filled in one of these products for a client who decided that they wanted to use that to manage their suppliers. And as someone who knows what they're doing in this space, it took me 4 days to complete.
Oh, wow.
And that's just not workable, right? It's completely unreasonable to say, well, you want to work with us, I need you to spend a couple of days filling out this security thing or this information about your business. So we've deliberately built it to be really light touch. So, out of the box, it's asking you about what security credentials do you have? And if you haven't got any, well, your risk goes up because you haven't got any proof or evidence that you're operating securely. But we try and go for the kind of the low hanging fruit. Tell us the obvious things. And it takes about 5 minutes to fill out a profile rather than 4 days.
Yeah.
And for the company using it, if you want to go a bit more in depth, you can build a custom form to ask about the things that you're really interested in that the system doesn't already ask about. So you can go as in-depth as you want, and you can assign your custom forms to different suppliers. So if you go, well, that one's going to be a critical supplier for us, so they need to answer this really deep dive form, it's fine. Build your form and assign it to those suppliers, and they'll come and fill that out for you. So there is that opportunity to go really in-depth if you want to, but don't make every supplier go through that, because that's going to really tick them off. So you want to go for try and make it as easy as possible for people to engage in the process, and then actually you get better traction and better visibility of your suppliers.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's cool.
Andy, if we're having this conversation 5 years from today, what do you think we'll be laughing about that we're currently stressed about?
Everything but AI. Look, I think we've talked a bit about AI already today, and I think I think frankly we'll be laughing about how naive we were around the security of AI and, kind of all the bad stuff that's happened as a consequence. But everything else, I think, will a little bit pale into insignificance, actually. We're rolling out AI solutions left, right and centre at the moment, and people wanting to be ahead of the curve and be early adopters and first adopters, and we've got AI stuff springing up all over the place at the moment. And I think there's a great Greek word, the word Kairos. It means a moment filled with opportunity and danger, and we're living in a very Kairos moment in that sense. I think we're looking at the opportunity without really considering the danger. And right at the heart of ISO, it's opportunities and risk, right? And everyone's getting very excited about the opportunities that AI is presenting, and the excitement of all these fantastic productivity gains that we stand, and cost reduction, and all that kind of fun stuff. But I think all of those will come at a great cost for people who didn't do the work to think through the risk. And that will be an interesting view looking back. So laughing at everything else and laughing at ourselves for not really considering enough the risk of AI.
Andy, why are we doing this podcast?
That's a great question. I'm going to flick that back at you.
Oh,
because this podcast was your idea. So you tell me, why are we doing this podcast? And then I'll give you my answer.
Nicely done. You pulled the Uno reverse card.
I did. Uno reverse right there.
So I think that in a world of AI and, Zoom calls and stuff like that, it is good to have authentic conversations with people where you can sit down and just, chew the fat. So I thought this was going to be a good idea to connect with the right people, to have the conversations that a lot of people aren't having.
Very good.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think there can be a lot of smoke and mirrors and egos in this business. Particularly in technology, you get a lot of IT people who come across as being incredibly arrogant. But I think that's almost necessary, because if you're not doing the right thing, then you shouldn't be doing the job, right? And I think actually kind of lifting the lid on the humanity of that, and recognizing the pressures and the challenges in the job that we do in trying to secure companies, I think that's really important. It can be quite a lonely place otherwise, and trying to work in isolation. There's so much to onboard. There's so much knowledge out there. There's so many challenges, and so to just unpack that a little bit with people, show actually we're people. We have feelings, we have emotions, we have our own insecurities around how we do what we do, and I think that's just really helpful to see, and I think it's a difficult industry space to get into as well. I think that there's all these kind of news stories about the skills gap and the kind of under-resourcing in the security space, and yet you talk to people on the street who are trying to get into the industry, it's actually really hard. And they're struggling to find the jobs, and everywhere wants 20 years of experience and paying about £13 an hour. Just in fact, I saw a job advert recently that was based in central London, 5 days a week on site insistence, for a retail body, and I think they were offering, they just had to increase the offer because it started out at less than 100k. And I just say, the old peanuts get monkeys mantra. I think security is undervalued, actually. You put the security of your business as a kind of a cost to the business if we get it wrong. We're in some settings you're talking multi-millions. JLR and Marks and Spencer's being very recent examples in last year, and I think if you don't resource this properly, the ramifications of that can be significant, and you want good people at the helm, and you need good people delivering the work too. So an opportunity to come and talk about that, and just put that out in as a resourcing piece for people who might be decision makers in businesses looking at security, but also for our fellow security professionals to go, well, with you, we feel the pains that you've got, and hopefully add some value to them if you're not the only one struggling in some areas like that. So yeah, that's why.
Nice. I mean, it's quite interesting what you said about it being difficult to get into the industry. If you was to kind of start to expand ADL, what are the kind of things that you would look for in a potential new hire? Like you said, some organizations, they're going to want years of experience, they're going to want tons of certifications, but based on the kind of conversations that we've had, you look more into, empowering people. So what kind of qualities would you look for in an individual or multiple individuals if you were looking to bring them into ADL?
Hunger. Yeah, hungry people get stuff done. Mm-hmm. I think, I'm interested in hungry people with aptitude. People who are self-starters, who are genuinely interested in the work that we do. I'm less interested in your qualifications. Great if you got a bag of qualifications, that's always lovely. Mm-hmm. But you've got to be able to translate that knowledge into easy to access or easily accessible language for non-technical people. That's an absolute given. And as I say, I'm interested in people who are interested. They are passionate about security and excited about opportunities and the work that they're doing. Those are my two things. So hungry and got an aptitude for it, but personable with it and able to take that stuff and communicate it. Those are my key go-tos.
Nice. It's interesting you say that because when you look on YouTube and stuff like that, there's tons of kind of videos about how to get into the industry, and they all do lean towards certifications. There's, hundreds of them where they'll say, do these 5 certifications and you're guaranteed to get an interview. A lot of the time, these certifications cost a lot of money. Some of them haven't been updated in a while. So, yeah, for anybody that's listening, it's not always about the certifications. Like you said, it's useful to have in some instances, but
yeah, if you want to get into auditing, you've got to do the auditor badge, right? If you want to be a CISO in a FTSE 100 company, probably you're going to have to get CISP or CISM or something like that. But yeah, outside of that, or if you want to go and work in a SOC, there's some nice badges that'd be worth getting for that. But I think, I'd say far more interesting to me is that you are just fascinated by the space and you're excited about that kind of work, right? And again, I think that the whole thing of taking people on a journey, I've talked about it a few times. You've got to take people with you in security. You can't just be a stalwart out there on your own, trying to carve a path. It doesn't work like that. You've got to bring the business with you. So finding people who are good at winning people and understand security, so they can do both together for what we do as a business in terms of helping other businesses implement 27001. That journey of bringing them with us on that and explaining why we need to do things and the value in doing things securely, that's fundamental. And you can't train that, right? People have to sort of find that for themselves in being hungry and excited. I like to think ADL is quite addictive. One of the reasons people work with us is we bring an energy and enthusiasm to this thing that most people thought was going to be boring. And in fact, the kind of quotes that we get back out of our clients are, "I thought this was going to be dull. You made it really weirdly interesting." Right? that infectious enthusiasm for what we do, that's really key. You're someone fairly recently come into security space, right? So what's been your journey and what did you find different to what you were expecting or way better than you thought it was going to be?
Interesting question, actually. So I didn't really know what to expect. I've never worked in a corporate background per se. Worked in the military, then as an engineer, and then I worked in marketing. So post-military, everything that I've done has been quite autonomous. I've been kind of left to my own devices to manage my own time, manage my own objectives, and that's always kind of worked for me. So going into security, I kind of went into it with an open mind, didn't really know what to expect. But the experience so far has been fantastic. The guys at ADL, great. Yourself, obviously, Shah, Sophia, I know you're listening somewhere. Yeah, it's been fantastic. The clients that we work with as well, they're all just a great bunch. So, yeah, I'd probably advise anybody that's looking to get into the industry to shake off the kind of notions of imposter syndrome. That was the biggest thing that I thought. I'm not going to be ready for this industry. My intention was to wait many, many months and stack certification after certification after certification so that my lack of experience would be compensated by a load of credentials. But, I went out on a limb, saw a post that you posted on LinkedIn, and it was mentioning something about experience, massive gap that I had. We had a conversation, and apparently I said something that worked. So here we are.
Yeah, I think I was going to say like a childlike interest, right? You watch kids learning, and toddlers can be fascinated by something, and it's just an object, but they're lost in it for a while. I think that kind of childlike approach to everything's fascinating in security, and also shaking off arrogance. Right, I think it's really important for security people to lose arrogance, and the smartest people I know, and the smartest people I work with, that they all know that they don't know stuff. Right, there's sometimes I'm in a room with people so much smarter than me, it's embarrassing, but they've brought me in because they recognise that the stuff that we do as ADL, that it's not their thing, so they're leaning on us, right? And that, I think that's been really key. And I'd encourage, again, security professionals out there and auditors working out there, park your arrogance, right? Approach things with a childlike interest, and just be enthusiastic and interested in what's going on. Every day is a school day. Learn. Don't be afraid to learn. Don't be embarrassed to say, I don't know, actually. I'll go and look that up. And that's actually really endearing. And really helpful to clients to hear you say sometimes, well, actually, I don't know, but I will go and find out for you. That's a real enabler and breaks down some walls as well. So.